Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Kunavang, it does. They need me.
Welcome, End of Dragons Daily 72. It's one of those beautiful, late spring days. Feels summery, hot, blue sky, clear weather. And now, late mid-afternoon, it's suddenly got really grey and really cloudy, like it's about to storm, but you can still hear all the birds. Oh, what a day. It's also patch day. The big conclusion to Champions, and hopefully some kind of tease for End of Dragons. Maybe a week roll in for lots of news. This show might be changing a lot here. So I'm squeezing this one out early before the patch. I have not played the patch as I do this commentary, even though you guys will be watching the video after it's gone live, so don't worry about any spoilers for that. I wanted to squeeze this one in early because yesterday obviously we had a special guest on, that was Boots. He decided today's topic, it was housing, which we kind of already discussed a little bit, and so I've tried to grab some comments, just a small smattering that I think are interesting, maybe a new take on stuff we saw before. I also figure, since it's about to leave, I'll give one last hurrah for the Super Adventure Box. I know there's a lot of exciting other footage we can show. I did the Griffin races yesterday, which I thought was particularly cool to check out. But, you know, get as much SAB in there while I can. Not only is that the footage in the background, I also have a little giveaway for you guys. I figure I can start doing these. We haven't done these for a while. I'm going to give 400 gems. I want someone to create some fan art, and I'll platform it on this show. So do you remember a little bit back, someone had made fan art for the map of Cantha as they guess it might look in Guild Wars 2's art style? They even said, by the way, they might do battle isles and stuff, which would be a very cool idea for interim content. Well, I figured there's some fan art I want to see. It's Super Adventure Box related, all right? And we're still in the SAB as I shoot, so it's still on theme, it's still on topic. I want to see this piece here, okay? Now, this is the loading screen and also the world map for the Super Adventure Box. I want to see this as fan art unfogged, so the clouds have receded, and instead what we see there is a proper map out of all the unreleased zones. So you guys may not be in the know about this. Shaman data mined it 2 years ago now, I think. He actually data mined it a bit earlier than that, I think, but there was a big Reddit thread on it 2 years ago. I talked about it back then. You guys might have forgotten. We do actually know what the original idea for the subsequent zones was going to be. And in fact, last year, the big man, the architect for the whole Super Adventure Box, Josh Foreman, did a big playthrough of it. He did some fantastic streams. It kind of blows my mind that was a whole year ago already. And he kind of affirmed and talked about these a little bit more. So, here, check it out. This is Shaman's Reddit post. This is what you could find in the data. Obviously, World 1 and 2, we already know, referred to as zones here. The Sunny Glade, the Dark Woods, the Kingdom of Fungus, Rapids, Pain Cliffs, Storm Top, and then the Storm Wizard. These are obviously already in-game. And what's listed as the Storm Wizard is actually technically, you know, the little mini bonus event. Just like the cart. Now, there's the unreleased Zone 3. Check this out. We find refreshment in the sparkling pools. And our friendship is renewed. So that's kind of already on the map. But then time to hold our breaths as we go underwater. That's not on the map. There's no art for that. And there's clouds everywhere, obviously. We'll find our way back up through the mines. Rumor has it a powerful creature block the exit to the collapsing caverns. And then survive in the caves. Oh no, robbers again. Now these bonus events don't actually really appear on the world map, by the way. And then finally, Zone 4. There's the graveyard. The gatehouse. Storming the gatehouse. The smells of evil magic are coming from the laboratory and the parapets, one of which is kind of shown. So if anybody wants to make that fan art, just a world map of Super Adventure Box, but no clouds there, or maybe minimal clouds there, and the zones mapped in, I'll give you 400 gems. We'll see whether we get any responses to that. Let's jump in on the player housing discussion. Boots tasked you guys with 3 things you'd like to see in player housing. And we'll take some of your guys' ideas. Pablo Pancho said features of player housing. 1, decorations just like in guild halls. I think that's pretty much a given. 2, trophies from story achievements. Trophies felt really kind of weird there. And difficult group content. And 3, a bookshelf for all of your collected logbooks. Now, when we were discussing this before, I talked about the power of armor cases and weapon cases. This is largely from my time playing Terraria around that time. And, you know, I love being able to show off as decorations all the gear I've been wearing after I've now out-leveled it or whatever. And I think this would be a part of the solution to what we were talking about 2 days ago, that there are so many weapons available and new weapon sets feel kind of lame to get in. Well, if you had player housing that could properly show them off and display them, it actually feels pretty good. I would even say whole weapon sets start to feel good with that as well, because you can kind of lay them all out next to one another, and there's that extra. It's not just the UI has unlocked showing that you've got the whole set. You can see the whole set. I think that's quite powerful, and we can already see a little bit of how that might feel in Lion's Arch at the Black Lion headquarters. There's maybe a question of frame drop and, you know, how many models and stuff they can put in, especially heavily animated weapons, which they do a lot of now. But, you know, in my fantasy, I do think that's a big thing. But this guy has pointed out, you know, you could actually do the trophies, just the straight-up Guildhall trophies, which is a brilliant concept. I really like that side of the game. I never hear anyone talk about it. But, you know, one of the Spud Club's missions, that's for both Spud 1 and 2, for what it's worth. Spud 1's got the jump on it, obviously. Is to get 10 of all the decorations. And that actually means getting all the trophies as well. And getting every single gold trophy actually is quite fun if you get to be a part of that scribing experience. But only one guy is probably doing it in your whole guild, or funding it in your whole guild. Doing it on a more personal home scale, now that I can see. And so now what you're doing is you're not just encouraging all these new weapons and armors and stuff. You can actually just encourage people to go back to dungeons. And you can encourage people to go back to fractals and get more fractal currencies and raid wings that maybe they're not doing, and so on. You know, I tend to believe there's a lot of players like me. And a player like me right now likes raiding, especially likes progression raiding, but can't be asked with it at this point and hasn't done it for ages. This would make me go back so I could show it off in my house, you know, getting all those new wares on various vendors for magnetite shards, stuff like that. There is obviously going to be a part of the player base that has tons of them stockpiled, but no worries about that. Bookshelf for all your collected lore books as well. I mean, it's okay. I'm actually not that excited about this one. You guys might think I am because, you know, I like the story and so on, but I don't know. Unless they're doing something really fancy with it, or, you know, like there's a whole library wing that you unlock and there's like a progression to it or something. I don't know whether I really care that much. Or you could actually physically see the books modeled in-game, but you don't. That, by the way, is an interesting concept as well. You know how guild halls have separate buildings within them? Like there is a war room and a workshop and whatever else. It's interesting to think that maybe in your player house, you could progress through it like a guild hall on a personal scale. You know, because one of the things people have always complained about with guild halls is not just the price of scribing, but generally all the progression systems within a hall are calibrated for 20 plus people. I actually think technically the dev said 10 plus, but people don't buy that. So, you know, a lot of people have been asking for guild halls that appeal to a smaller group size. But I wonder if you can actually solve that problem, not by adding guild halls that appeal to a smaller group size, but just making personal player housing, which exists on a solo scale, that can be progressed very similar to a guild hall, has multiple buildings and different things to tier up. Now, that would be a really godly way to do the feature. We are, of course, now talking about them putting a lot of work in. They managed it with Heart of Thorns and you know, the guild hall side of it, which was kind of a crunch deck spec. Maybe they come with this one as well. And so, yeah, the idea of decorations obviously is a no-brainer. I will say Final Fantasy XIV was quite interesting for me. When I unlocked dyeing, I realized not only can you apply dyes to your gear, but you can apply dyes to furniture in that game for like their tavern housing system thing, which, you know, Guild Wars could have even for the Guild Hall side of the game right now, right? I haven't seen anyone really talk about that, but I think that's a feature that Final Fantasy XIV's got, Guild Wars could use, and that shakes up the dye economy a little bit, maybe. Oh wait, everything's account bound. You probably already have most of them, all the basic palette covered. I don't know. Next, we've got Jordan, who said, "I'd love to see to be able to place any unlocked harvest nodes wherever I want. They just share a cooldown between all the sources, as they currently do, if you visit your own house and other people's. What would be cool is if you could place a number of minis or mounts or chairs and other novelties as decorations." This is brilliant. Everything you said here, I think, really would go a long way. First of all, yeah, they already kind of do share a cooldown. It doesn't even matter about visiting other people's houses, but if I harvest all my home nodes at the Black Citadel, but I'm playing in Asura, when I visit my actual home in Ratasum, they're still harvested. So, you know, the underlying tech or scripting or whatever is there, and is probably applicable to a proper home instance. There is that question of what happens when we have player housing. What happens to the home instance? Does it does it absorb the home instance? Like, does everyone by default just unlock furniture and stuff for their home instance? Except we also now have the choice to go other places, and when you choose a new place, it kind of takes away the old one. Or is it a separate thing to it? I kind of don't like the idea of player housing being separate, because that's kind of that clunk that I was talking to Boots about yesterday. It kind of feels like these are two systems that are too close to one another. So I like them, it being a big universal system, and it's just this big new idea. And yeah, being able to move those around, that would be nice, whether we're talking about the existing home instances or even totally new areas, you know, out in Kaineng City where we might like to set up a house or whatever. Not only that, but I think you've got some great ideas as well. Put our chairs around, you know, repurpose those novelties to a certain degree. The minis, the mounts. Dude, I'm telling you guys, there should be a farm or something. You know, being able to display all my mounts and pick mounts that are wandering around the fields surrounding my house or something, that would be badass. That would be badass for guild halls. That would be badass for player houses. It'd feel a bit like the Zaisha Menagerie from Guild Wars 1. It would get more value out of all these incredible skins. And again, it's just that fundamental problem of, you know, I've got a mount I like to ride on list. I really like the Badger Springer. But I also really like a lot of those other Springers. It's just, where do I display them? Well, my home instance. That might be really good. The final thing with this, though, is like, they could add all of this stuff. What's really on my mind now is, what's my incentive for showing it off to friends? And I know it's just, well, because you want to, because it's social, because it's a part of the MMO. And I get that, but I feel like I want a little bit more as well, because at the end of the day, I am an efficiency-minded MMO player that sometimes forgets about having fun and kind of needs to be driven to stuff. So I wonder what that would be. Like, for example, I have a maxed out home instance, which I'm fairly proud of, but I don't really stand around sharing it with people, you know? What could we do to have people even regularly visiting each other's homes? That would be very interesting. Not that they're obligated to, not all MMOs have done that. Derveg says, not related to Guild Wars 2 at all, but I would love to hear about Boots' D&D campaign. Yeah, lots of people said this. Listen, guys, I'll maybe do this, but it would be a different show. I do still have a lot of ambitions, an incredible amount of ambitions for stuff that isn't necessarily just End of Dragons and isn't just Guild Wars. So, you know, we do have the floor as a format. Maybe I can do that there. Somebody mentioned bringing Matt Visual on the show as well. I haven't talked to him for a very, very long time. As I say, I'm open to other guests. It doesn't just have to be Boots. If anybody wants to come, they can just shoot me a message. You know, even they said, oh, you couldn't talk about End of Dragons with Matt. Well, why couldn't I? I think that'd be quite an interesting catch-up chat, wouldn't it, in a way? In any case, next we've got Heinrichchen. Houses located around cities that working like an instance, meaning your party can enter it with you. I think that's a no-brainer. The same decoration features guild halls have, but also take some elements from the Hall of Monuments, where you can showcase rare achievements, raids, and CMs. You know, I think I'm detecting a theme. Maybe not just in your comments. I've probably cherry-picked a certain idea here, but a theme in myself. And that's, I really like the stuff that lets me show off. And yeah, some kind of display for titles? What would that look like, though? What would that be? Some kind of plaque you can put on the wall with the text of the title? There's a lot of titles in game now. But that would be a fun idea too, for sure. Danny says, for housing, I think they'll include a way to use Scribe without having to have a guild. I also think they'll put housing in the form of neighborhoods in separate maps like they did with guild halls. I'd like a way to show off mini pets, collections, achievements, and legendaries. So yeah, let's talk about the scribing thing. I did mention that Path of Fire kind of revamped scribing to a certain degree. It didn't really revamp scribing progression, but in terms of like the new crafting recipes and scales of economy that are behind that, it is way more simple. I think in a lot of ways kind of butchered. Scribe's a weird thing where it is so different and so much more involved to the other disciplines that people kind of hate it. But to me, I actually see that as a lot of quality. And I 100% understand why it's tedious to make every nib for every pen and so on. But you got to remember, a lot of those early criticisms were before some of the UI changed. Since Heart of Thorns, that's now the case. And it is something you acclimate to. You know, I've done a lot of scribing. I have made thousands of kits. And eventually you do kind of just figure it out and you get a routine and you work it out. So I kind of like that scribing feels a bit different. But should scribing be as expensive it is if it's going to be for player housing? Absolutely not. And you might see that they go for this more simple approach. I think something will be lost from it, but they might go with like, you know, Canthan matrices, just as we have all those like Alolan matrices. And in that case, yeah, it could even come to player housing. It is a weird one because you know, they always were meshing together a weird concept here. Really, we're a, like, furnisher, we're a carpenter or something, but instead of calling it a carpenter, they called it a scribe, and then made it about blueprints that get churned out by an assembly machine. So if the scribe is still doing stuff with the player housing feature, does that mean we're still, like, obligated to be around an assembly machine and stuff? And remember, the assembly machine was an interesting method of time gate mechanic for these big, large-scale projects that then they just nerfed away, basically. The assembly machine, as it actually functions in-game now, is rubbish. It's like, a lot of recipes don't even use it, and the ones that do trigger instantly. It's, like, completely unnecessary. It's just there to justify why we're a scribe. Like, this is really messy at this point. So I almost would like to see not scribing be on player housing. Keep scribing with the assembly machine and the guild halls, and hold that back until you really can assess what's wrong with it and do a revamp way down the line. But for now, on player housing, add a new discipline. I think that's better for marketing for the X-Pack, and it's a more simple discipline, it's a cheaper discipline, and actually call it a carpenter or something, you know? Maybe even add 2 of them, one for furnishings and one for living creatures, and you can call it there. That would make the expansion look better. And I don't believe in this idea that that's a bait and switch or whatever. You know, you can properly fill it out. That might mean new backpacks and stuff, and we'll see what they do. The other big idea with the crafting, obviously, is whether jewel crafting is going to be maxed out this expansion, and I guess we'll see. So there you have it, guys. A little bit of a canvas of player housing stuff. I do have one more question. This isn't on the topic, but I thought it was interesting. Sangria said, I'm sure you discussed this at length in your playthrough of The Last Day Dawns, but perhaps it's worth retreading the subject. Is there any genre you feel would greater benefit the storytelling to do the world of Tyria justice? Yeah, I've talked about this a lot, especially on streams. I tend to talk about this a lot. I get very wide-eyed and enthusiastic thinking about all the different places that they can take this franchise. The number one thing you'll see in the community is people looking for a single-player RPG. I'm not so much in that camp. I get the logic of why people say it because of how, you know, a lot of the living world is structured and so on. But actually, my dream that would do the storytelling justice is an RTS. I think a real-time strategy or even a grand strategy would be so good for Guild Wars, because you would really get a sense of big armies, big nations, big land masses, that kind of epic concept art feel you get that just does not translate into an MMO that you become overly familiar with. That is what I would really like to see, and I think it would be a blast to show off, especially if it was like a decently complicated, interesting game. Like, I've been playing a bit of Total War, just a tiny bit, to be honest, I should get back to it, but playing a bit of Total War Warhammer. And, my god, those games are amazing. The build craft in those games, the like, equipment and spells and units you can pick, it's amazing. You guys obviously already know I'm a massive fan of Astaris. So, yeah, some kind of big, epic, it doesn't have to be like a kind of small-scale RTS style experience. It could be something a bit broader. It could be something that you pause. A game like that, I think, would really benefit Guild Wars and can actually tap into some of the buildcraft fundamental strengths from the inception of the franchise. Whether the studio has any fans of games of that format and actually would end up going for them, I don't know. And by the way, that's the other thing. I think that people would play a game like this on a lot longer time scale than they would play a game that's trying to be like God of War or something, you know, which is kind of a one and done. Maybe one would get more critical accolades or whatever, but unless they then turn that into a serial thing, I don't know whether that's just going to be more of a flash in the pan. In any case, there you have it, guys. That's End of Dragons Daily for today. This is going to be a weird one because I'm sure many of you are watching this video knowing at this point what happened with the patch, and I don't. In fact, it's about to come out, so I'm going to go and play it now, and hopefully you'll see more videos very soon. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Oh, don't forget about the SAB World Map Art giveaway. 400 gems for you.